guests, welcome. I have the privilege to moderate the last panel of the day, the last panel actually of 2 days of the 10th Slovenian Forum of Innovation. I have esteemed guests, Mr. Peter GLOBOKAR from Moorland Partners. Mr. Peter is actually of Slovenian origin, but has been working abroad for several years, the last decade, if I understood, in London. Then we have representative of Zemanta, ŠPETIČ, a well-known company also in Slovenia, and Zemanta has been known, at least in the Slovenian environment, for helping the other startups. And of course, VIKTOR from Comtrade, that it's a much, much bigger company that you could actually imagine. I also just learned of all the areas of the company. So before going into questions that we prepared to give you our views on why to specialize and why specialization matter, I will give my esteemed panelists short time for their presentation so that you could better place them in which areas of specialization they will be later elaborating on. The floor is yours. Perhaps, Peter, you want to start? Oh, okay, like you want.
However, so I'm coming from quite mature software engineering company that basically exists on the market more than 20 years here in Slovenia. And when you're putting the question about specialization or basically generalization on the how basically companies are profiling their vision and mission on the competing on the markets, when we started 20 years ago, our vision was basically to be one of the pioneers in nearsourcing, outsourcing. In that time, late 90s, it was sort of blue ocean in the software engineering industry. Later on, when the enterprises faced the first wave of the digital transformation, we moved and switched our vision to be basically leading system integrator. Of course, this specific wave of the business challenges in technology then changed, and nowadays basically we are also running, following the money flow in a way that today more and more digital transformation is an essential part of the implementing and integrating innovation. So today we are more talking about investments, innovations, startups, mature startups, unicorns, etc. And our vision is also shifting toward that direction. So today we are not just system integrator, we consider ourselves as innovative technology integrator. Of course, in our level of maturity and the size of the company, being present basically on all global markets, from the US, Western Europe, even Southeastern Asia, etc., with different portfolio of products, services, or different types of partnerships we established during the years, we are also all the time changing our approach in the generalizational specialization in a way that basically being professional service company in the essence, at the end, most of our previous speakers here said that we are very good in this technology, products, development, etc. And being very good in that specific element, we are constantly changing our specific customer focuses. So it means that for us, we are always following these 3 horizons models, where we are searching for viable options on these blue oceans and innovation. At the same time, we are trying to implement some nearby mid-term emerging opportunities and keep running business stable and profitable. So, and during all those years, this is a continuous process. So we never can say literally that we were focused just for the specific area. It came by the specific situation on the market, specific situation on the specific industry segments, on the challenges that we are facing globally. So this is a nutshell sort of answer to your question and the sort of presentation of the country itself.
In our short presentation of Zemanta, and in terms of what you focus on, your products, your development, and perhaps on the specialization per se, we will focus a bit later.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I started a company with my co-founder 8 years ago. The company pivoted 2 years ago. So essentially that means that we changed our specialization like dramatically from one focus to a different focus 2 years ago and had to adjust accordingly. All the systems, some of the teams, the whole technology stack and product stack. So I think this pivot was an interesting experience for this particular panel. In spare time, I'm also...
Micro closer.
In spare time, I'm also helping a number of startups around the globe with their specific problems. So I see a lot of different challenges in different industries. They're not just web, there are other industries as well. And I'm also a co-founder of a Silicon Gardens Fund, which is an angel syndicate here in Slovenia that invests in very young, proof of concept stage, strong entrepreneurial team like startups.
And now, Peter, your expertise on especially your company, how you're also helping the others, and your description of the company and specialization, as I said, we'll focus a bit later.
Sure. So my background, I am a founder and a partner in a company called Moreland. It's been about 20 years now since I've started advising technology-based companies on exits. So my job, to simplify, is the job of a real estate agent, except that I don't sell houses, but I sell tech startups, usually smaller companies to larger companies, most often from Europe to the US, but really acting around the globe across all of the major technology verticals. And so as part of that, what I focus on is creating shareholder value, understanding how shareholder value is built, what the components are, and obviously specialization in that aspect plays a major role. I don't look at speciality or specialization just as something that has to do with technology or with product. It's also a question of business model specialization. It's a question of customer specialization, verticals, geographies, etc. And in each of those components, of course, there are areas where specialization matters and areas where it doesn't matter with respect to creating shareholder value. And so we can talk a bit about that today as well.
You just open out the topic, so where does it matter in your view? I assume you would have different views, not that you would have conflicting views, it's just based on the experience that you've had so far. So perhaps where does it really matter?
So for me, someone who's specialized can be specialized at various levels. Specialized at, first of all, at the level of the technology and of the place it takes in the value chain. And I would say that obviously it's very clear that product and technology specialization is probably at the foundation of shareholder value today. And if you just take an example, a company that will develop a piece of software in a proprietary way, but at the same time provide some integration services, it's very difficult to determine what the real value of the company is. If a company is only in one specific field of activity, it's much clearer to be able to define the value added of that company in its segment. Then when you look at geography or customers and geography, I think that the more, if you look at it now from a technology perspective, the more unspecialized you are. In other words, if you can apply your technology in a horizontal way across multiple industries and verticals, you're doing well. So specialization in one particular vertical is helpful, but actually if you can apply your specific knowledge and expertise and product in one particular vertical, you're not as good as if you can apply this to many verticals. Geography is the other aspect of not needing or not. It's actually where it's counterproductive to be specialized, because if you specialize only in your home market, you know that your addressable market is limited. And it's all about addressable market when you think about this. It's about making sure that while you specialize and people can really identify your value add, that you're not constrained by your markets, by the vertical you're in, by the geography you're in, etc. So, and then finally, I think that business model specialization is also very important, because people will look at your ability to generate profits, and the cleaner it is and the more predictable it is in terms of how you generate revenues and profits, the more your value will be bigger. So if you look at how conglomerates today are valued in the market, there always is a discount to how the shareholder value of a conglomerate is looked at, because actually there is complexity in running a conglomerate. There are various products, various business models, etc., that don't necessarily talk to each other. And investors look at these types of models as something that actually is less of a value creation.
Perhaps just to build upon the argument on business model specialization, Zemanta, you have only a few years of existence, and you, as you mentioned in your introduction, you pivoted. So how has the business model really evolved in this short time frame?
Yeah, so the business model pivoted. So the previous model was hyper specialized. It was so specialized that we realized that the market just not large enough anymore. And we saw that because the growth stopped, and we had to go into a different market which required totally different business model. What I wanted to ask actually Peter here, who sees so many companies and sees so many buyers or acquirers of companies, so I'm asking from a point of view of a small startup, how do I know if I'm sufficiently specialized? How do I recognize that with myself? I mean, I can talk about vision and I can talk about what we're really good at, and every company has to know what they're best at in the world. That all translates to specialization to me, but how do I actually know if I've done a good job at it?
Well, I think that you touched on it. I think that it's a question of addressable market, and it's also a question of margin. So first of all, I think it's easier to see if a company is on the right track or not if it makes revenues. That's the first point. I think that if you are very early in your revenue cycle, it's very difficult to assess where you are in terms of specialization, right?
Maybe I can jump here also from our own company perspective. So, for example, more mature segments are in company, more profitable they are, and more basically focused on certain customer segments. So this means basically that they are in plateau of productivity, and they are reaching and they're gaining more and more customers on the global level. Or however, if there is a more regional focus, then it's on the regional level as well. Of course, more early in your company life cycle you are more generalist in that sense. On the other side, we are hearing a lot of this type of I would say if you talk especially about professional services as well. If you talk about product-oriented, I would say early companies, then of course you have to be specialists. But so it's very difficult to give a prominent answer or unique answer to that type of the question. It really depends. Are you focused on the regional base? Are you focused around the product? Are you focused on specific professional service skill sets? So it's always sort of generic question and answer.
But maybe one more aspect to this is if you are a technology-based business and if you're a product-driven business, what really makes the difference in terms of specialization is if you see that you can fit into an ecosystem. Imagine the technology stack as being just a series of bricks, and if you're able to define your brick and to say, look, I am this one particular brick in this big wall, and I'm solving a specific customer requirement or a specific customer problem, that's when you're specialized. And I think that it's actually the customer who tells you whether the solution you provide is clear and specialized enough for him to understand how he can integrate it with what he does. If you tell to a customer, look, I can do everything for you, I can tell you the weather on the Monday and play music to you on Tuesday, then I think that the customer value you bring is actually very limited, but the margin that you will make from this will also be very limited, right? And so there is a relationship between specialization and margin as well, to the extent that you know exactly what kind of problem you solve. The other aspect, of course, is scarcity. Without specialization, you don't have scarcity. And what really drives value is the scarcity. Is if you are the only person who provides a particular solution, chances are that you'll be able to sell this solution for a lot of money if it's a solution that is required.
Okay, so there's an interesting indicator I think I heard there. If you have partners from the ecosystem, that's a decent sign that you are specialized at something. If you're a lone wolf and you're just doing stuff for your customers, then yeah, who knows?
So it's both. Is both having customers and also partners, and partners will recognize that they need to sell your solutions together with their own because they're not able to develop what you do, or they just don't see this as their speciality, right?
Perhaps moving from these views also from the business model specialization and then comparing Zemanta's recently new company with Comtrade, with more than 20 years of existence. I want to open the geographical specialization, which I agree with you, it doesn't matter in all the cases and it has pros and cons, but throughout the life cycle of your company, Comtrade, more than 20 years, you probably, I assume you started on the European market and then eventually you moved to the US market. Is there your geographical specialization different than on this market?
When we are talking about mature product portfolio, then basically there is no regional specialization. We are providing global products, and all operational stuff and also sales marketing is basically global. So most mature segments in our company are basically global company, if they are basically focused on the products. If we are talking about professional services part of the organization, then of course it's more regional. It's more country-oriented because it requires certain level of intimacy, certain level of relationship with the customers, so you can basically provide the best value in that specific part of the portfolio. And of course there is always this gray area between, where we have sort of, we are calling it as a technologist, sort of platforms or basically sort of building blocks for some specific solutions in some industries, then it's sort of a combination. And this is exactly the flow I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation. And in the large corporation, you always have this type of transformation. And of course, most mature products are always option to exit. At the same time, you are continuously searching for the innovation at the beginning of the equation, so you can start and eventually in certain period of time create new mature products or portfolio of your offering. So that's ongoing process in our company, as I mentioned before.
And a question for Peter, the clients that you have, depending on the stage of the life cycle stage where they are, but these concepts that we are discussing here, are these concepts that are let's say, earlier company, startup company, is easy to grasp in, or is just that they are not yet familiar or they do not want to focus on any type of specialization? And your advice apparently would be specialization matters. How do you approach them?
Again, if you look at it from a geographic perspective, I think it's a question of money. If you're a European company and you want to sell your product in the US, it'll cost you $5 million before you even make any sale, frankly. So that's the limitation. I think that when you develop a product, you need to think about how global it can be. And if you look at the technology stack and you start with the hardware and then you look at the software and then you look at the services that are technology based, it's very clear that hardware is probably the most globally transferable piece of technology, because frankly it can be mounted anywhere. It doesn't need to be adapted for language except maybe for the instructions on the box. But hardware lives well internationally. Software also to a degree, but the more verticalized it becomes by industry, the more it also deals with local customs, regulations, etc. And then of course, as you were saying, I think once you enter the services part, whether it's business services or whether it's even consumer services, so e-commerce, content, etc., you end up having to deal with perhaps a more localized aspect, except if you're hyper-digitalized and if what you sell is digital goods, because digital goods today travel very well, and you can see that people who provide content, whether it's and who distribute digital content, are actually the ones who can globalize very quickly, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Spotify, etc., or Facebook or Google. But from a startup perspective, I think that it's important to be able to prove that you are specialized at the product level or at the service level, but that your addressable market is large enough for you to be able to grow very fast and for a very long time.
Maybe just one additional point here. When you are special, I think it's important for startups also to understand, and it's nothing wrong with it, it's part of the overall process. Once you specialize around specific product and you not gain the market value with the specific product, there is always a second option is to provide specialized services in the specific industry or the problem you were trying to solve with the product before. So, and nothing wrong is in it to basically switch from one model to other in order to find next product you will build and try on the market again. So it's one of the points. I think it's essential to be understandable and clear for the young and smaller companies.
So so I agree, but there is a very big difference. If you are successful in selling a product, for example, a software product or a hardware product, there is a scalability that you have which you don't have in services, because services requires people, and there's only 12 hours in a day of someone who works in a service organization. And so inherently there is a fundamental difference in shareholder value when you look at these models. A service company today in the market is valued at let's say 1 times revenue, and a software company is valued at 3 times revenue. And if it's a software as a service company, so meaning completely automated cloud platform, then you're valued at 6 times revenue. So you have very big gradients in how companies are valued depending on their business model, of course.
And perhaps just a sub-question on Comtrade, on your partners in the US, because you all agree that it's very important how the partners are. Is this the view that they would have, or is the partners in the US that they would have a different... I know the digitalization is a separate issue here, quite important, but the partners that you're having, they are specialized, or you build upon their specialization? How is it there?
Usually in US we are working with the leading technology vendors, HP, CMC, Citrix of the world, etc. So, and of course, in those conglomerates, we have then specialized unit. We are partnering with our own product portfolio or our own specialized professional services portfolio. So it's not so simple to answer, but basically on a general level, yes, we are trying always to leverage from the professional services to the basic specializing and providing the value on that part, and bringing some innovative products on top of it through the different types of additional agreements we have with our major partners there, OEM deals, or using their channel to bring our products on the market together with their own specific portfolio of products. So this is, I think this is one of the ways how also our companies, especially from Slovenia, could think and could also try to find viable options to their go-to-market strategies. And this is also one of the aspects we could discuss later, how also mature companies in this specific area can help startups in this process.
Perhaps now a question for Samantha, because you're helping other startups, and since we are at the Slovenian Innovation Forum, those companies that presented themselves here, what would be your advice? We can see that some are very specialized, producing windows, etc. What would be your, let's say, on-the-spot advice?
Always know what you are the best at in the world, and that's your specialization, and then find all those people that have that problem and sell it to them. And only then, after you've done that, after you are de facto market leader, even if the market is just 5 people in Slovenia, then you can go and broaden your scope. That's like theoretical, on-the-spot advice.
Useful. If there are 3, they are the key ones to remember. And Peter, if those companies that are here at the Slovenian Innovation Forum would tomorrow knock on your door, that I see that not many are listening, what would be your, let's say, 3 main pieces of advice?
Actually, they're very similar. If you are, the point is, you can think of yourself as being the best in something, but if nobody buys what you have to sell them, that's a starting point, right? So I think that the customer is king when you want to make revenue. I think that for startups, there is a first level which is make revenue, because that's where everything starts. A second level is create growth, and the third level is make profits. And only when you're mature, you can sort of put the profits before the growth. But at the start, it's all about revenue. If you can't sell what you produce, then you're not a company.
That's clear enough. And earlier, Mr. Victor, you wanted to elaborate more on the mature companies. If we move now from the startups to mature companies, what was your point of view? That
the same type of challenge that startups are facing is the same also for the mature companies. Basically, if you check the main discussions about managers in Slovenia is how to innovate within the mature companies too. So in that sense, the challenge is the same in a way that we have to change our perception that innovation starts inside toward outside, inside out. And the biggest challenge I see at the moment, not only in company like I'm coming from, but in the all region, is that all our innovation is more inside-out focused, and it's more oriented to the specific know-how and excellence we are providing and existing business models. What we are missing really is this outside-in model, where also mature companies innovate in a way that are more and more present on the markets, where they are searching for the new opportunities. And in that sense, I could agree with Peter that also the part of the innovation, technology innovation, I think it's not a challenge for this particular area. We are quite good in that, but what we are missing a lot, and I think on all levels, from the governmental level to the mature enterprises level to the startup level, is basically business innovation. Real understanding and know-how and experience how to run and bring innovative products on the global markets. However, they are combined or whatever business model they are implementing. This is really a missing point all over the...
Okay, so let's talk about this for a second here. If you take Slovenian startups, let's say you take not just the ones that are on paper, but people who have actually built companies, who are the best at something, who are the best at doing something, and who have some customers, and who have all the business scalability challenges that you're describing, the only problem that all those startups have is that nobody will ever buy them. So if mature companies want to help startups, it's not through any kind of advisory services or whatever, or events or whatever. It's by actually treating them as an equal participant in this corporate marketplace here.
I agree totally with you. Basically, I'm a representative of the mature company that doesn't want to deal a lot with the local market from the same reason. But what I'm really missing as an essential part of the equation that we are not implementing in here is corporate ventures. In a way, I would like to see petrol ventures. I would like to see Gorenje ventures. I would like to see even Comtrade ventures. We can come to the points how government can help in that process with some tax deductions, etc. But this is just one of the part of the larger equation that we are missing at the moment in this specific area. We are missing mature enterprise companies that are helping early startups or seeding startups to get market permissions, even locally.
Yeah, I agree. I would just replace the word help with the word acquire. Corporate ventures is a good mixed solution, and some of that is happening in form of angel investments from founders or owners of the companies for reasons I don't really understand. But until there's some M&A starting to happen, which is relevant for this panel because that's actually trading with specialization, right? You basically you look at the market, what are all these entrepreneurs figuring out, who are successful, and then you buy their specialized knowledge and then you make it scalable, right? And nobody's doing that here.
Completely agree with you.
But-
This is I would say this is also one of the biggest opportunities for mature enterprises in Slovenia and wider in the region to create new business models.
Yeah. But one of the fundamentals here, and I agree with you, is that buying companies is not that easy, because you're not buying chairs and desks and television sets, but you're buying people. And so when you buy people and you buy ideas, you need to make sure that you know how to treat these people. You need to make sure that you know how to leverage their knowledge. And I think that there is very, very little expertise in that field. I think that there is a question of scale before you can do M&A. Just to come back on your corporate venturing side, I think there's partially the same problem here, which is the expertise and the knowledge. To invest into a company, you need to know how to evaluate this company, you need to understand what the risks are. And because there's very little knowledge in terms of how you can evaluate all of this, also, by the way, for acquisitions, I think that the default position is, let's not do this because we don't know how to deal with it. And so there is a lack of education around how to leverage other teams and specialized teams, etc. Right? And nobody's able to really show the benefits in a large corporate in terms of what does it actually really bring to acquire something.
So in other words, the experienced companies don't really know how to help small companies.
Absolutely
Right?
true.
That's the point. And by the way, we do have made a corporate venture fund in Slovenia, right? He's over there. Supposedly the real problem is not so much expertise than lack of capital on the market in those corporations in Slovenia.
So maybe that's another aspect, which is that you need to do corporate venturing, you need to be a very cash-rich company, because before you decide to add corporate venture, you have to be of a scale and of a profitability that allows you to do this. So if you look at who does corporate venturing today in the market, there are actually not that many companies, right? And it also comes and goes. Some companies are fundamentally committed to corporate venturing, Intel, Qualcomm, etc., who live from IP and IP creation, Google Ventures, etc. But then there are a lot of other businesses that just don't know how to really allocate funds to that, or who themselves are just not profitable to get there. That's the other aspect. So whilst you could say that Petrol or Gorenje, etc., are large companies by Slovenian standards, or even Krka, they're actually tiny companies by global standards or even by European standards, and it's very hard to find pockets of money in there.
Yeah, but that's fine, because the Slovenian startups are also two-person shops with a brilliant idea that improves a small piece of the world, right? So it's easier to integrate a two-person startup.
I think behind this very valid point is a basic fundamental question is how healthy our business relationships are in the country, in a way, how really every single level from the governmental level to the mature enterprises to the startup ecosystem, how they are interacting between. And that's the problem. Of course, we would never dream to be on the global level, on the size of real corporate ventures, but the model itself should be known and should be implemented in a size and the level of the specific market we are playing in.
It's great to listen to you because you have very, let's say, diverse views, but still they're all completing the whole picture. And each time, be it the EU level, the global level, or even the smaller Slovenian context, it really matters if the companies like you're representing are able to, actually if they're investment ready, but also on the other side, the companies, the corporate venture that you're now pointing out, if they are ready to invest in. But of course, it has to be regarded in the Slovenian context. And since we are now slowly running out of the time, perhaps since we are the concluding panel of the 10th Slovenian Innovation Forum, your, let's say, concluding remark for the panelists, or not just the tip of advice that you gave before, but a concluding remark from the specialization point of view, and perhaps from the point of view what the authorities in Slovenia, or also EU-wide, meaning me as representing the European Commission here, what are the key issues that you're missing still, or where the authorities should move out, or where the authorities should come in? Meaning, if this can be then your concluding remark. Perhaps, Peter, we start with you.
I'll give you my 2 cents on this. The first level of observation is what happens to Slovenian startups. And I think that the very simple truth is that there is actually, that the ecosystem is just too small for Slovenia to just look at itself. And so if you're a Slovenian startup, the first thing you probably need to do, or if you're not a startup, if you're a Slovenian entrepreneur, you just know by definition that you're going to be more successful if you try it out in London, in San Francisco, in Paris, in Berlin, etc., because there's an ecosystem that you can work with. And that's just a fact of life, and I think it's important, at least from where I sit, if I had to make my own startup in Slovenia, I would try and move out very quickly and maybe continue development in the country and so on, because it's going to be very difficult to do something that will be successful only in Slovenia. So at some point you need to decide how quickly you internationalize. On where the EU helps or doesn't help, etc., I think that governments individually have several levers. They can deal with taxes, they can deal with investment. Both are related because it's just the same pocket distributed in different ways. A lot of countries that are successfully supporting their startup ecosystem create tax incentives or have investment funds. I don't think that Slovenia has either of those, so there's clearly something that can be done at the country level. From a European Union perspective, I think people don't know that enough, but there wouldn't be any venture capital in Europe if there wasn't the European Union putting money into it, whether it's the European Investment Fund or other institutions. So I think that there's a lot being done already by the European Union as a financial investor into the development of innovation in startups in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I will refrain from commenting on the tax legislation. I will say that there's one area where only the state can help, or only Europe can help, and that is the most important one, and that is education. Particularly, we feel it very heavily here in Slovenia. All of the innovators here, or I would bet that 3/4 of the innovators here don't have any sales or marketing specialist on staff or in the core team. And that's not because they wouldn't want to necessarily, it's because these people do not exist. This know-how does not exist on the market. Even the entrepreneurs are incredibly good at educating themselves or ourselves. There are even self-initiate, from grounds up, initiatives that educate entrepreneurs. Supporting the good ones is a good idea. Getting it into official curriculums is a good idea. Whatever. Education is the single most important thing that the country has already done well in the last 8 years, I think. Even without incentives, this is the most important thing, I think. And yeah, on the flip side, I think my closing remark for all the innovators here, just innovation without customers doesn't exist.
Yeah, so it's basically hard to follow now when they've said most of the things that we already. But there is one good quote basically from the famous Steve Jobs he said something like good artists copy, great artists basically steal. So, and I think there are good role models worldwide that we just have to follow, like for example Israeli Startup Nation model or Ireland model itself for EU members. And we just simply have to copy most of the good elements they already implemented in their own markets. They are considerable comparable countries, and they put their state strategy on the innovation. Israel Startup Nation I think is widely known model for accelerating innovation. At the same time, you have Ireland with significant tax deductions on the R&D, intellectual property development, etc. And I don't see any reason that Slovenia just don't follow this type of the strategy. Another important thing here is, you mentioned it from your perspective, education. I would say education on all levels. So it means starting from Prime Minister to the basic students, school people, everyone has to understand how basically money flow business models are functioning today. And as well as cultural change, we have to be personally, but also as a company, we have to promote ourselves better on all levels. So those types because at the end, everything is about selling. You can have excellent product, but if you don't know how to sell, then basically it's not worthable. The same is with the countries, you know. You can have beautiful hidden secret of Europe like Slovenia, but if we don't know how to sell it globally, and we obviously don't know. I'm traveling a lot worldwide. It's basically 2-3 months per year. And every time when I meet with the new people, first thing I have to explain is where is Slovenia and how beautiful it is. And I think it's a big problem. Just start from those small steps.
Thank you. As a moderator, I will now use the opportunity to say a few final sentences building upon what the panelists said. So, key for Slovenian environment is the openness from the day zero on, and to build upon the good education and to merge it with entrepreneurship skill, with the investment readiness skills. And also there are other models that need just to be copied with comparable countries like Ireland that was pointed out. And there are no geographical or cultural reasons why the region or the marketplace here wouldn't be more known abroad, given the very booming startup community that exists. And using the arguments from Peter, and basically they're the same arguments that I used in the panel which I participated before, that there is so much untapped potential in cross-border flows from day zero, be it on the fundraising and on the investment side, and the same for the companies. And there is still lots of maneuver that the states, including Slovenia or others, have in the tax advantages or certain tax schemes. So I think that they should build upon this to make it also more open and more attractive environment. And of course, the soft skills like education are one of the, let's say, good basis where the environment here should build further. So thank you very much, the guests and all the participants for being with us. And I'm now concluding the panel. Thank you.